first of all, massive thanks for joining us, boys. Con O'Neill and Mark Hutchinson. I think the best thing to do is, rather than we've been doing a series of these interviews, we've done one with Willie Russell a few weeks back, and obviously because we can't go into schools doing the Blood Brothers drama workshops or performance workshops, we've been trying to create other resources and stay proactive and engaged, basically. So there's been a lot of interest in this, in speaking to you boys. I don't think many conversations we have with teachers without your names being far from popping up. So what we'll do is, if it's all right with you boys, just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how you started with Blood Brothers, I guess. Con first, maybe.
Hello, I'm Con O'Neill. I played Mickey so long ago I can't remember the dates. Weirdly, through my career, because Blood Brothers comes up a lot, obviously, because of my history with it, but I keep getting told versions of how I got the job, which none of them are true. I got the job by auditioning. I think it was the Duke of York's Theatre. I'd been jobbing in reps, and I'd done a little bit of telly. I didn't have any kind of profile. It was for the tour before it went. It'd already been in the West End, Barbara Dixon, George Costigan, and True Schofield at the Piccadilly, sort of like 10 years before that. I auditioned for the #1 tour. I went on stage. I knew Bill Kenwright was a Everton fan. So I seem to recall I wore something Evertonian, like a t-shirt or a badge or something. I walked on stage. Bill was in the auditorium with Bob. I sang Sunday Afternoon. And the only surprising thing was I wasn't asked to read. I just then was called into the auditorium and sat with Bill, and we chatted. And he noted that I was wearing a t-shirt or whatever, and asked me if I was an Everton fan. And I said, yeah, not, but you know. I got the gig. And then we toured for a year and a bit, waiting for Willie to give permission for us to go in, because Willie had the West End rights still, and Bill only had the touring rights. This is my understanding of it. I might be wrong, so please don't sue me. And then eventually Willie gave the go-ahead, so we went into town, and the rest is Blood Brothers history. Over to you, Mark. Be funnier.
I'm not a football fan, so it had nothing to do with Everton. Bill saw me in a pub doing a musical called Pippin, and he came up to me afterwards and said, why have you never auditioned for me? And I was without an agent, so he said, come to my office. And he gave me a script and said, look at the part of Eddie. And I said, no. I said, I'm Mickey. I said, my parents are working class Irish. I was born in Liverpool. I'm not posh. I can't sing that high. I'm Mickey. He said, no, lads, you've got Eddie's eyes. So I looked at Eddie. I went in, had 6 auditions, would you believe? And after the 5th audition, Bill said the job was mine. Before, when he saw Pippin, he said he was just matching up Mickey's, Eddie's and Linda's. Because if you've seen the show, you know that it's very important that Mickey, Eddie and Linda have a sort of chemistry, because otherwise it's not very believable, or the audience don't buy into it as much. So I was just doing a pub musical for nothing a week. In fact, I was so broke I was cutting my own hair, which I should be doing.
Like now?
Well, no, I've been actively growing it in this lockdown period.
Okay.
After 6 auditions, I remember actually my first audition, I walked onto the stage at the Albury, and Kiki D was sitting next to Bill Kenner. I thought, oh my God, Kiki D is coming back. I love Kiki D. And because I was in the 3rd cast, and Bill said, what are you going to sing for us, Mark? And I said, I'm going to sing in a very unusual way. And that wasn't a comic comment, that's the name of the song. And he said, bloody hell, that's my favourite song in the world. So I felt very pressurised then. But after 6 auditions to get the job, I would have paid them to do it, frankly. And it was a wonderful job. And I kept leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back. And do you remember, Con, when I first worked with you, my twin Russell fell through the roof of the conservatory and slashed open his arm. And they were in a bit of a So they called in Con and said, would you consider doing it for a couple of weeks? And Con said, yes. So Con and I think we had 3 days rehearsal.
3 days rehearsal. I'd been away from it for about 4 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was literally on holiday when I got the call, because I was about to start a film. That's why I could only do 2 weeks, because they asked me to do a month or 6 weeks, or knowing Bill, it's probably asked me to do 10 years.
Yeah.
But I could only do 2 weeks because I was due to start filming, and I remember it was the first time in my life as an actor that I had any power in negotiation, and just knowing that was. And we didn't ask for the earth, we asked for a reasonable wage, but just having that knowledge, that understanding that with power, the word no is the power that you have as an actor. It stood me in good stead for the rest of my career, really.
Brilliant. And the nice thing was that Con and I realised that we lived very close to each other. Con was living in a pub with Nick Moran and various other reprobates in Clapham, and I was living in Clapham too. So I said, Con, I don't know about you, but I feel a bit underprepared because we've only had 2-3 days. Do you want to meet up on Saturday or Sunday to rehearse? He said, yep, let's do that. So we became we were neighbours, we found out, and we became friends. And we worked well together on stage, which was nice.
And Sarah Lancashire was our Linda.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's
it was
right.
a wonderful time, and it was great because when they decided they were going to take the show to Liverpool, Toronto, and possibly Broadway. People say, "Oh, I wonder who gets to play Mickey." And people very specific. Well, Colin O'Neill won't do it. He won't do it. He definitely won't do it. And I remember various people in Shuttleworth, the Wine Bar underneath the theatre, say, "Oh yeah, and it won't be Colin O'Neill. He definitely won't." I thought, "Oh, I hope he does." Because, you know, although we just done 2 weeks together, we became good friends. And if you're good friends on stage, as you know, Stan, as Mickey and Eddie, you can do a lot more than script. You can give it meat and substance. And you just have that extra level of safety. I remember sort of working with both of you as Mickey and feeling totally safe in that you did whatever you did and I would go with the flow. At one point, Stan spit my lip on stage in the Christmas scene. And I've got a lovely bit of scar tissue there. And I remember thinking, hey, I wonder if this has been bleeding. I bet this looks great from the audience. And and kind of when I was working with you, I just sometimes you got very angry, and sometimes you were very interior. But I just went with whatever we did, and it was a joy to do it with both of you. And if you have a Mickey to bounce off, I think Mickey and Eddie, they just make each other better. I've seen it actually with Mickey and Eddie's competing. And trying to be the top dog, and it really doesn't work because Eddie comes out badly, Mickey comes out badly, and it's not good for the show. And lucky enough, Con and I never did that, did we?
Or did we? I remember once when we were doing New York, the only time we ever competed was we both did an interview together for Broadway World or something. And they took us to one of the restaurants, and we had never done an interview together before, and we should never do an interview together again because it just became the poor interviewer just didn't get a look in. We just became, both of us became Judy Garland within seconds of her asking the first question. And I think it's, the other thing about Mickey and Eddie's, which I think is a fundamental problem with a lot of the casts, is that what is forgotten and what doesn't seem to be on the agenda is that they are twins. They are from the same womb and they have the same energies and characteristics, and that is the unity on stage. Is if you feed into each other's energy rather than negate it, that flow is immense. And I've seen Blood Brothers done with good Mickey and Eddies and bad Mickey and Eddies, and sometimes a good Mickey and sometimes a good Eddie. And the only times it really flows is when they listen to each other and also when they're allowed to do something of their own. I think the problem with taking over is that you're shackled a bit by the actors' choices. And I saw the jumper thing that we invented when I first did it. People never really understood. Very few of the Mickeys ever really understood the relationship between Mickey and his jumper, and so it just became a gag. And and that's important. That's another thing about Willie's writing, is you never play the gag. The only time you can play the gag in Blood Brothers is the poem, because that's what it's written for. Mickey's poem is written as an introduction to an adult playing a kid, and it's limerick. It's a poem. And so you can have fun with that comedically, but other than that, you never play the gag with Willie. It's just inherent in the writing. If you play the truth, people will laugh. I'll stop talking now and play the guitar.
I love it. So, guys, we talk about. I'm jumping here a bit, Mike, on the questions there, but just as Mark was talking there about Liverpool and Toronto and Broadway, and we talk a lot about how differently Blood Brothers might be received in different areas, such as, you know, when we're on tour, like from Glasgow to Richmond, and the difference on there with it in a UK national tour. But how different was it with an American and sort of English audience?
It never really worked in America, did it? To be brutally frank, it was always the actual
ovations.
Sorry?
We always had standing ovations in the States.
Yeah, the narrative worked, and the emotional narrative worked, but the Scousisms, the class thing, those didn't work in the States. There's a famous, not famous story, because none of you know it, so it can't be. But me and Mark had Shag the Bishop.
Shag
Is that the line?
Shag
the Vicar.
Yeah.
Never worked. It never ever worked. Never got a laugh. Because Shag in the States is a dance. So we were given free rein for a few performances to come up for Mark to ad-lib the line to see what worked. And I have never corpsed as badly as the night Mark Hutchinson said in front of a full audience of paid audience members, instead of Shag the Vicar, Mark Hutchinson shouted, "Pork the Pope."
Can I just say, I'm sure that was Willie's idea, honestly.
Pork the Pope.
Because Willie came into my room sometimes.
And then literally left me to die on stage because I couldn't speak.
And another one was Buff the Bishop, but that was a Willie.
Buff the Bishop.
Yeah.
Buff the Bishop didn't really, was neither here nor there. Pork the Pope.
Yeah.
Genius.
But we
In
decided.
fact, he should rename the show. The show should be called Pork the Pope.
Brilliant.
But having said that, at the end, we always had crowds at the stage door crying and sobbing and wanting photographs and autographs. Because, as Con said, the emotional story worked, because it's very simple. It's about family. But apart from the class and the religion and the politics, people were drawn into the emotion of the family dynamics and the twins story. And we had American people aren't afraid to cry and sob and bleed in the audience. They really sort of let their emotions go. Whereas when I was touring about 2 years ago, I noticed blokes in the front row with their girlfriends. They were there because they'd rather see the football, but they were there. And at the end, the girls would be crying, females. And the guys said, "Yeah, that's good, mate. Got a bit of hay fever at the moment. Yeah, that wasn't bad. Yeah, not bad." And that's the difference, I think. Over in England, we're very sort of reticent about showing our emotions. But in the States, people show them very, very readily.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, it went down I think it was a lot more emotionally driven, the New York production. It was the Liverpool, Toronto, New York experience was so intense. We went to Toronto with a full British cast, and then it was announced halfway through that only 5 of us would go to Broadway. And so we were rehearsing in the last 2 weeks of Toronto. We were rehearsing in the American cast. So myself, Mark, Jan, who played Linda, Stephanie, and Warwick, there was quite a torment, emotional torment going on because we felt a little bit disloyal and blah blah blah. And so by the time we hit New York, it was much higher. Emotional intensity was much higher than we'd ever played it in the UK. So it was, to all intents and purposes, I don't know if it was a better production in New York, because I think possibly the emotional hey, saved by the cat. Look at those reflexes. I think I think we may have overplayed the emotion in New York. We were certainly pushed that way, but it was an exhausting show. I think I've never been so tired doing this show as I was in New York. New York was utterly emotionally draining, and as soon as we opened, we were then on the Tony and the Drama Desk Award roller coaster, so you never really got time to settle in. The way you open a show on Broadway, you have weeks of premiere previews, and then you open, and the intensity of the opening night is obscene. The amount of pressure put on the actors on the opening night week, and then within 2 weeks of opening, we were nominated for all the Tonys. So with the Tony roller coaster, you've got Tony votes in every performance. You're doing interviews, you're doing lunches, you're doing dues. So yeah, we were all utterly exhausted.
It was intense.
And I think the audience bought into that as well. The level of expression on stage was higher than it was anywhere else in New York, and I think the audience were quite surprised by that, because musical theatre in New York and it's a very different thing to anywhere else, and we were very different to anything else that was happening in New York at the time.
Going back a little bit, what you talked about rehearsing together. When you initially started in the show, each of you, what was the rehearsal process? How long was the rehearsal process when you first started?
Well, we had quite a long time, because we opened in Hornchurch, which was Bob Thompson's. He was the artistic director of Hornchurch at the time. So I think we had 4.5, 5 weeks. And because we were a new production, we were allowed to and encouraged to find it all ourselves. And I don't think Willie was involved. I don't think Willie was in rehearsals. He may have been there at the read-through, but I did Educate Reader a few years ago, and Willie was there a lot in rehearsals, which was an absolute godsend. But I don't think he was there in rehearsals. It was very much Bob directing, and then Bill would come in towards the end. And there was very little pressure, because if it worked in Hornchurch, it would go on tour. That was just, it didn't become what it became. It was very much quite a freeing, quite a generous rehearsal period.
What about you, Mark?
I was lucky. I had 3 weeks rehearsal, because quite often nowadays, if you're in the cast, you'll get up to 3 days, 5 days, 1 week rehearsal, depending on how many people are leaving. But in the second cast, an awful lot of people left, so we had a lot of new people. So we had the luxury of 3 weeks, which I felt wasn't enough, actually. But looking back, it was a luxury at the time. And the thing about rehearsals, I always think you carry on rehearsing when you open. There's only so much you can do in a rehearsal room. But once you get on stage, that's when the real rehearsals start, because then you have the audience factor joining in, and you learn how to gauge your reaction, how to play a moment, if you're being too big, if you're being too small, if you need to let the audience come closer, if you need to sort of give them a bit of distance. So I had 3 weeks, and that didn't feel enough. But I think people say, well, did you spend weeks, you know, sort of studying childish mannerisms and watching children in playgrounds and things like that? And you didn't have time, basically. So all I did was I just remembered what I was like when I was 7. It's that simple. And although I thought I was Mickey, there's a lot of Eddie in me, I realise now. So I used an awful lot of me growing up to sort of inform my Eddie, as it were, as I'm sure Con did as well.
Oh yeah, I wasn't listening. I was thinking about my hair.
It's lovely. It's lovely. Yeah, those extensions look great.
Love it.
Don't they? It's just the moustache. By the way, I have to explain. The moustache isn't because I'm doing porn. It's
Not again.
it's I was halfway through a film when we started lockdown, and it's just we've just been given a possible start date again, so I've had to regrow the moustache. Otherwise, I'm considerably fatter than I was when I left the film, but at least the moustache will hide some of my chins, hopefully.
Brilliant, brilliant. Mark, you recently talked about how you had to avoid the trap of matching the Mickey energy.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, the thing is, when you're doing rehearsals, you've got a bunch of about 10 grown men and women having this fantastic fun with this crazy energy, and they're going wild in kids' game and all the things they're doing. And as Eddie, you stand at the back and look at it, and then you walk off stage. And it's very hard not to copy Mickey's energy with all the wildness. And the great thing about the children is they have no sort of inhibitions at that age. Their physicality is very free and loose. And I just decided very early on, as Con said, Mickey and Eddie are twins, so they have similarities, but they have differences as well because of the way they're brought up. So I decided to play Eddie a little like I was as a child. I was quite quiet. I watched, I listened, and I was not that I was ever told, stand still, don't put your elbows on the table, but I imagined when we went to visit my auntie, who was a nun in Crosby, we were always on our best behaviour. We taught, you don't put hands on the table, don't speak unless you're spoken to, and so I always think I was always on Sunday behaviour, because Miss Lyons was a very repressed, very 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 stern mother, I think, as in don't do that. She wanted a perfect child. So I think Eddie was brought up to be very well behaved and great posture, and just to listen to people and watch people, but not talk unless he was required to talk. And his physicality, I decided he didn't play with children his own age, because I decided Mrs. Lyons was very protective of Eddie and wouldn't let him go out to play in the street. That was very vulgar. And so she left him with an encyclopedia to read and let him be educated. But I decided to play Eddie very quiet, a little lonely. And I think the reason why he's attracted to Mickey is Mickey, he doesn't realize it's his other half, but he wants to have that freedom and that energy that Mickey has. But I decided if I matched that, it would be too much. So I had to constantly be stiller. It sounds silly, being still on stage can be quite hard. But I think I've mastered it now. I'm teaching a 3-year course soon about being still. It's quite a gentle course, but no. So I decided just not to match the other actors' energy, but to keep my energy interior, if that makes sense.
Like that. Question for you, Con. This will probably come up again when we introduce Sam, our student, shortly. But you mentioned then about the movie. One of the questions it's come from a teacher and from a student saying, can you talk about the difference in disciplines of performing on stage and for screen?
Yeah. Do you know, I've had this debate, and whenever I do teach or lecture when I go into drama schools, I remember being, I remember hearing Michael Caine talk about the difference between theatre acting and film acting is theatre acting, and I'm paraphrasing here, theatre acting is operating with a scalpel and film acting is operating with a laser. And for me, and I've been blessed in my career to be able to do a lot of theatre and TV and film and amalgamate all three techniques. But for me, you find the truth of the character, and the playing of that truth becomes a natural osmosis in whichever category you're working in. I really don't understand this idea that you pull it all back for film and you release it all for theatre. It just, obviously vocally there's techniques theatre they don't use on film, but emotionally and your character's narrative, I don't see any difference at all. You just have an inherent understanding of what the truth is. As long as you're playing the truth, as long as you've done that work and you've done your subtext work and you know what your scene is about. I did a thing called Chernobyl a year or so back, and that there's a lot of theatre actors, probably more theatre actors in that than I've ever worked with on a TV or film before. And there was an inherent understanding from the cast of what the scene was about. So there was no grandstanding in Chernobyl. Everyone played the scene. And that's quite rare in TV and film because it's so insular, you're never given time to rehearse. The actual relevance of the narrative of the scene becomes, unimportant. Whereas it is the most important thing. If you're telling a story, the narrative of the scene and the place of that scene in the narrative of the piece is the most important thing. Performances are secondary to that. So for me, the difference between theatre acting and film and television acting is minimal. If you're working on the basis of finding the truth first and honouring the truth and honouring what the scene is about, then whatever what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever area you're playing, whether it's film, TV, or theatre, just play the truth. And your director's job is to say, bring it down or bring it up. That's their job. So just find the truth.
Brilliant. Mark, just back on, in regards of Blood Brothers, one of the questions that when we're doing workshops and then we do Q&As or whatever we're doing, what comes up mostly every single session is Linda and Eddie's relationship. And the students sort of reading into what that is and what that isn't, and do they have an affair and all the rest of it. Do you have a take on it?
Ooh. However you answer this, it will follow you for the rest of your life. No
and we're recording
pressure. Yeah.
I actually think because a lot of Eddie is in the subtext and the playing. I think it's too glib and too Mills and Boone to say Linda's too faithful and too in love with Mickey to not have an affair, and I think it's too glib to say Eddie wouldn't do it out of honor. I think when you have two adult people who are very lonely for various reasons, and I think Eddie is a very lonely adult. I think he's doing a job that he's just drifted into because that's the way his parents saw his life going. I think personally, my Eddie always felt a bit alone, a bit lost, and he didn't know why. I think we find out at the end why. And when you get two lonely people who are hurting at the same time, looking for comfort and need and possibly love, sometimes you get two people having a relationship at the wrong time, at the right time, for the wrong reasons, for the right reasons, and they need each other. So I tend to err on the side that they do have a relationship, and I just think it makes it more interesting as well, because it makes Eddie a more rounded character, as well as Linda, because life is never black and white. Life is never simple. Life is full of complications and situations. So I think, and it's not a judgment, it's just two lonely people. I think it's two lonely people. I think the song A Light Romance is a really hard thing for the actors Eddie and Linda to do, because that is actually a scene they're doing without words. Basically, you've got Mrs. Johnson up the top explaining what's happening, and as Linda and Eddie, you have to imply something to the audience and let them see into the characters without having any dialogue. So there were some lenders I worked with where I sort of actually did a real kiss, and some lenders I worked with where it was more a tender, friendly kiss on the cheeks. But it depended on the actress playing Linda as well, what she thought, because you wouldn't like to sort of, overstep the mark. Hashtag me too. And but I always talked to the actresses I was working with, and we had lots of talks about this. And I think, yeah, I like to think that they did have a relationship. They sought comfort and solace in each other. And I mean, you saw that wonderful scene, the pill scene we call it, with Eddie, with Mickey and Linda. And it always breaks my heart watching that scene because it's so powerful, basically. And even in rehearsals, as Mike and you will all know, whenever Mickey and Linda are doing that scene in rehearsals, the whole room goes completely quiet because everyone, regardless, gives them the respect of silence. Everyone gets drawn into it. At the end of that scene, you can hear actors going, because it's such a powerful, cleverly written scene. I mean, I'm so jealous of you, Stan and Con, having that scene. I said to Willie once, why can't Eddie have a scene like the pill scene? Because Eddie never really says what he's feeling. It's all in, I'm not saying a word, I'm watching, I'm listening, and it's all implied, and it's subtext. But when I see Mickey and Linda do that scene, my heart breaks because I think it's a very real scene. And as an actor, I'm very, very jealous. I hate you both. You know, I sort of wish I had, not necessarily with Mickey, I think a scene with Linda personally, where Eddie says, look, everyone thinks I'm the golden twin. Not the golden twin. Everyone thinks I've got a golden life and I'm lucky because I have money, I have a job. But actually, I'm as lonely as anybody else. Something's missing in my life and I don't know who I am or where I'm going. And I think Eddie would benefit from having seen like that. Mickey, well, Willie said he sort of agrees, but the thing is, it would unbalance the piece. I'll also make it about 4 hours long as well, because you can't do a play from every character's point of view. And as we know, Mickey it's his point of view, really, Blood Brothers, to a large degree. But what was the question?
What time is it?
Sorry.
Love it. Just a question. I mean, thanks for that brilliant insight. Question on Blood Brothers, and a non-character specific in a slightly wider sense. Why do you think, this is a question from a student, why do you think it's as popular today as it was 40 years ago? What's the secret of success with Blood Brothers? That goes to both of you.
Over to Con.
It's unlike any other show, not just musical theatre show, but it's unlike any other show where it gives the audience, it introduces characters to the audience from childhood to adulthood. It gives them the opportunity to fall in love and to grow and watch them grow. It's very, very funny. It's got some cracking tunes. It's got some great characters. Great opportunity for actors. It is, I've always said it's the musical version of Hamlet, as in it's to play Mickey, or indeed to play Eddie. When Bill first asked me to go back, one of the things I was talking to him about was that I would get to play Eddie on the matinees. Because I always think Eddie is an underrated character, always. And for me, because I've only had two Eddies, there's the late great Robert Locke and the still great Mark Hutchinson, and they were both very, very beautifully observed performances of this very complex, very clearly defined character. And I think that's what an audience responds to, is that there's very human characters on that stage. There's people that you can relate to. And you know, the word class has changed dramatically in this country over the last 30 years, but it's still there. We just call it something else. And it resonates with audiences. And one of the great things about Blood Brothers, but certainly more on tour than in the West End and on Broadway, is that when you tour the show, you are seeing the working class come to the theatre in the thousands. And that's why it has staying power, because it crosses the divide. A lot of theatre is unduly represented audience-wise by the middle and the upper middle classes. Blood Brothers is right across the board, and it makes you feel. And you know, people don't stand at the end of the show unless they feel an emotional pull to do it. I went to the National, I won't say the play, I went to the National a year or so ago with a bona fide Hollywood star in the lead, and it was so bad that not only did people not stand, and they always do stand for the bona fide Hollywood star in the lead, not only did they not, they resolutely sat because there was no emotional connection to the piece. Blood Brothers has that anthemic song at the end, but I don't believe it's just Tell Me It's Not True. I believe it's that the audience are gravitating towards the actors and the characters that they've seen on stage. That's why I think it lasts and why it's so popular.
I love that. Do you think that the theme of class is still important today, Con?
More so now,
Yeah,
than ever. You know, we have a. You know, we won't get into politics because this is not what this is about. But we are now seeing quite clearly that the country has been taken down a path that is not going to support the lower classes, and you know, it's manipulation. And I recently did a workshop of an Alan Bleasdale show, and it resonates. It was written, the original was written 30 odd years ago. It still really resonates. It's still, all the tricks that were being played in the 70s and the 80s are being played again. So yeah, I think we call it, we don't call it the class system anymore. We pretend it's something else, but it's still very much in evidence and worse now than it's ever been.
yeah.
I mean, look at the lack of support, the initial lack of support for the arts when lockdown happened.
Yeah.
And like the arts don't exist. The fundamental feeling that, you know, the wealthy can afford to go when it reopens, and it doesn't matter if the recs close, it doesn't matter if the small community theatres close, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that, you know, everything gets. And that's because the arts tend to be less right-based. Anyway, it's not political.
Well
so I'll
said.
step back.
Just think about the setting a little bit. Do you think the play would still express the same issues in the same way if it was set in a different city to Liverpool?
No, I think it would have to be a different story. Well, no, a different story. The thing is, the way Willie writes, and there's a reason why Willie doesn't write outside of Liverpool. There's a lyricism to how he writes and to the Scouse sound.
Yeah.
And it's integral to everything he does. And, you know, historically, Liverpool has had this battle, as much as any of the other cities in the UK, but historically, Liverpool has been shouting these statements for a lot longer. And I just don't see it working anywhere else. I believe I've heard stories that they've tried to do that, and it just doesn't. Rhythmically, it doesn't work. And, you know, I've done a lot of Willie's work, a lot of it. And, you know, you take a word out of Willie's line, the rhythm goes. You rush through his commas, your rhythm goes. This man, having worked on Rita as well as One for the Road and Stags and Hens and Dance Through the Dark and blah, 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 One Summer and all that, the genius of the man is absolutely on the page. And if Willie says it's set in Liverpool, it's in Liverpool.
Yeah.
There's no reason to set it anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the accent's really difficult, and I've heard that accent bastardized so often it just makes me.
I also,
But just, go on. Sorry, Mark.
he writes so well for women, and as we know, Scouse women, Liverpool women, Irish Scouse women, they're very, very strong characters, and that comes across in most of his work. He writes really fantastic, strong parts with strong, surviving women. Because Liverpool is such a sort of female-based sort of world. Rita, Shirley Valentine, Linda, Mrs. Johnson, they're all fantastically strong characters that he writes for as women, because he knows he was surrounded by women growing up. And I think to set it in Leeds or Birmingham or wherever, which it just wouldn't be the same. Wouldn't be the same, because as Con said, it is inherently Scouse, and there's something about sort of about the lifeblood in Merseyside and Liverpool that is very different from any other region.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Comma. Semicolon.
Shall we ask Sam for his question?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just a quick introduction for Sam. Turn your camera on. That's it.
Hello. It's been brilliant listening to you guys talk. It's been really fun listening to all your stories and stuff. It's honestly amazing.
Brilliant.
It's been great to listen to.
Let's just tell a little bit about you, Sam. So to the teachers that are listening, so Sam, you've just graduated. You're going. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, yeah, I've just left Hilbury High School a couple of months ago. Obviously, early, waiting for my GCSEs come soon, but I auditioned for LMA and Liverpool Institute of Fine Arts in September, and I applied for them, and I auditioned for LIPA earlier this year, and I've been offered a place. So in September, I'll be going to LIPA. Hopefully, if my grades do well, but I've got faith in my teachers, and but yeah, I've done a couple of shows. I've worked with some people in Chester. I've done Boxing Alone, and yeah, it's a bit about me.
Yeah, we've seen you work at
I've worked with Mike many times.
Yeah, we know you're fantastic.
And Steve.
So you've got a couple of questions then. So as a budding actor starting your journey, talking to these guys, what would you like to ask?
Well, I've got a question for Con. It's a bit of a long one, but based on like what all you've learned throughout your career, what advice would you give yourself as a 16-year-old, like to get into the film and TV industry? It's a bit of a big question.
No, it's okay. Grow thick skin. You're going to be rejected every day of your life in this business, no matter how well known you are or how successful you are still being rejected every day. So grow thick skin. Read everything. Read everything you can get your hands on. Don't believe everything you read, but read everything. Go and see everything. Beg, borrow, and steal to go to the theatre. The difference between watching a film and watching a theatre piece is when you watch a film or a television, that's been edited to the director's perspective. So you're getting the performance that the director wants you to see. When you go to the theatre, if it's good theatre, it's live. It's a live experience. So you're seeing sometimes acting that's absolutely in the moment. And when you see great theatre acting, you understand what acting is all about. Great theatre acting is about being present, being in the moment and listening. Grow a thick skin. Don't be late. And if you are late, apologise for it. Be the first there and be the last to leave, even if you don't need to be. Get there early, learn. Grow thick skin. And, you know, my absolute truth of my career is I believe that art is a karma issue, and that if a job comes my way that I don't connect to, I move aside, because there'll be somebody behind me who will connect to it and somebody behind me who will smash it. And if I'm not connected to it, I don't do it. There's been times where I can't afford to do that, but I've still done it. And I'm not suggesting that you turn down work when you're starving. It's just something that I've done. I think integrity with art is a massive responsibility. If you do shit projects people will think you're shit. It is that simple. So, you know, have the integrity to go, yeah, I can smash this. I can do something interesting in this. This terrifies me. I wanna give it a go. Have that integrity. Don't just go, yeah, I'm taking it because there's a little paycheck at the end of the day. And possibly the most important lesson I've learned is, and I mentioned it earlier, the only power you have as an actor, real power, is the word no. Use it. Use it. You know, maybe not so much in your early days because everything is experience. But sometimes, you know, I get sent something that the people involved are not people I want to work with, or that, you know, the commitment is too long for my own personal life, or that the money is not good enough, or that the commit, like they want you to sign for several years. You know, this you just have to have, the buck starts and ends with you as far as the work you choose to do. So just know that you can say no to stuff. It's not going to have a negative effect on your career. If you're leading people down the garden path, if you're recalling and then you get offered and you go, no, I don't want to do it, that's a bit silly. But if you get sent an audition that you just don't want to do, don't do it. Don't respect your creativity, respect yourself as an artist, and it will pay back. I hope. Don't sue me if it doesn't.
That's great. Thank you very much, Con. Really appreciate that. I've got another question here for both of you about what tips would you sort of like give for how you like go to auditions and how you would approach your audition or a character?
Prepare. If you've been given scenes, learn them so you don't have a piece of paper in your hand. Because if you've got a script in your hand, they can't see your eyes, they can't see your face. So prepare, learn the words. If you have to sing, learn the songs. So again, you're not sort of shaking with this music in your hand, and just sort of go dressed properly. And as Con says, get there early so that you're not sort of rushed in and casual. Just do the best you can. Make sure you've done your homework, basically, and be polite, and don't be afraid to be yourself, because it took me years to realize that when you're auditioning, you walk into a room, there are 5 people in behind this desk. You've got the director, the assistant director, the musical director, the choreographer, whatever. All these people, hello, and it's actually quite terrifying at first. But the thing is, they want you to be good, because then you're saving them time. They say, yeah, great, brilliant, he's perfect, we want that. Don't go in thinking, I'm wrong for this. Don't apologize. As soon as you get into the room, appear confident. Don't be cocky. Appear confident, listen. And so that if they say, can you do that again, but bring out a more thoughtful side of the character in the song or whatever in the scene, be prepared to listen and be directed without being thrown. And yeah, I just sort of, someone said the best you can give in an audience, in an audition, is yourself. Be yourself, because nobody else is like you. And that's great. I think that's great advice. Over to Con. Have you done any auditions, Con?
No, because I just get sent off as Mark. What I would say is a lot of what Mark said. I do, when I do teach, the thing I tend to teach is audition workshops anyway, because it's what I know a lot about. But the things I would say, the fundamental rules are: if you go to an audition and you get a recall, were something similar to what you wore the first time, because they liked what they saw. So, you know, you've got it right the first time. I think this also goes back to what being an actor means to me is when I'm in an audition and I read, that's my take. So the first time I read in an audition, that's my version of this character. If the director then says, can you try this? I don't hold on to I've had my take. So if a director gives me a note, I'll play the note. I won't, in my head in an audition, disqualify or try and qualify. I'll play the note the director has given me. On the floor, if I'm being given a note which I don't agree with, I'll have that discussion. But in audition, if director suggests something to me to try, I'll try it without hesitation. Because the whole point about being an actor is you serve your script first, you direct the second, yourself third. So that's what I would suggest with auditions. You know, I've been on both sides of the table in auditions, and I'm always amazed that any of us get a job, to be honest. But the people that I gravitate towards who come in are people who come in, want to talk about the piece, have got some take on it, have done the homework, never go into an audition having not read. If you're doing pieces, never go into an audition having not read the play, ever. Never do a piece from anything. Sometimes for TV and film, you don't get the whole script. That's fine, you just have to make assumptions. But if you're doing pieces from a play for an audition, you never, ever, ever, ever do the speech without reading the play. You cannot understand the speech if you don't know the context that it has in the play. And as far as singing, I haven't done a musical since Blood Brothers, so I'm the last person to ask advice about musical theatre auditions. So there we go.
Yeah, I'm not the best in the world anyway, but I've just got one more question. As well as I love to do is acting, but obviously throughout quarantine and lockdown, I've been spending a lot of time writing plays and doing screenplays and writing them. I really enjoy writing. Obviously I know you're both actors, but I was just curious, do any of you guys have advice for someone like me who wants to write films and plays as well as acting them?
Over to Con, because Con, you write as well, don't you, Con?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Sam, I would say I'm talking to Sam, but funnily Mark is on my screen. Isn't that so? And now Sam move, sing something. So you come up there.
Hello,
You go. There you are.
Hello,
Okay.
Con.
The writing thing for me is it's something I think all actors should write, because actors do have a great ear for dialogue, majoritively. For me, the process of writing is about writing. If somebody picks it up, fine. If they don't, fine. The process is about writing. I am predominantly an actor. That's how I earn my money. I've been paid as a writer. I enjoy the writing. I enjoy the first draft more than the second draft, because the second draft tends to be with producers' notes. So it's a bit like doing a tech. You know, you've rehearsed the play and it's yours, and then you go into the tech, and suddenly the play's not yours anymore. It's somebody else's. It's a technician's, director, blah, blah. That's what second draft writing is, and I find that quite frustrating. However, again, I'd only work with producers who I think are valid. So if they give me a note, it's well worth trying the note. I approach notes in writing as I do as an actor. If I'm being given a note and I've agreed to work with these people, I will write the note. I will try and make the note work. That's my job. The writing, the business of writing, do you know what? I could go really into all the intricacies and how difficult it is to get the break, and how difficult it is to, you know, I tried writing on the soap circuit, and just, I hated it so much, because I'm not gifted in that way. There are some amazing writers working on the soaps. I'm just not one of them. But write for you. Don't write for anyone else. And if somebody who's able to produce your script, read your script and produce your script, brilliant. And the way you do that, the way you try and get an agent, which is difficult, as it is as an actor. The other thing I should have said is get used to doors being closed, mate. You've got to, as an actor, you've got to be absolute. That's what grow thick skin means. Doors are going to be closed in your face all the fucking time. It will be a daily occurrence. Same with being the writer. But if you gravitate towards it and you feel that it's part of who you are and you need to express it, write it. It doesn't matter if it gets made. It really doesn't. That's just icing on the cake. The art is what you write.
Oh,
The
that's
result
great.
is what you write. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's great. I really appreciate you guys answering my questions. That's all I've got. But I'll definitely take that on board. Honestly, really appreciate that.
Thanks a million.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks.
Okay,
No worries.
And gents, and that probably brings us to a natural end anyway. Just to say genuinely from the bottom of our heart, thanks for your time. It's absolutely
Can I just add one thing to this? And I'm sure Mark will jump in if he disagrees. But for me, the essence of Blood Brothers, and certainly Mickey and Eddie, is you can never play them as a victim. What happens to Mickey and Eddie is circumstance. I've seen Mickey played as a victim and it doesn't work. Mickey is the most positive of people, and that's where the joy of him is, and that's where the joy of playing him is. And Eddie is the same. I'm speaking for you, not at you. In his joy of life and his joy of Mickey and Mickey's joy, it's a real. Blood Brothers is fundamentally a love story between two guys that's platonic, but it's a real love story, and that's often missed. Yeah. And the other thing I will say is I think Sean was a phenomenal Mickey, and I think I would love to hear Sean do one of these, because I think he was better than me. So if you do one with him, I'd love to hear his take on his Mickey. And it's also euphemism for penis.
I agree with Con. I think the thing about Blood Brothers is Eddie and Mickey and Linda are golden children. They're golden. And they're winners. They have everything in life. That makes the tragedy at the end so much more. And I have seen it where actors play the end at the beginning to a degree. And they they let you know things are going to end badly. And these three children, even up to teenagehood, they're winners. They have everything in life. They have friendship. They have each other. So I think that's part of the story why it works, because we've all had friendships like that, and where we've been golden at some point. And having been golden children, suddenly the end is so much more tragic, basically. So I agree with you, Con, for a change.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Yes.
Not at all.
Guys, again, massive thanks. It's
thank you.
It really is appreciated.
Oh, cheers.
Yeah, I've enjoyed honestly listening to you guys talk about Blood Brothers. I studied it in school, and honestly, listening to yours talk about it's really amazing. So thanks so much for having me, Mike. It's been great. I really enjoyed it.
Cheers, cheers, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Cheers,
Thanks very much, Con.
See you later. Take care.
Thanks a million, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Mark, coffee soon. Coffee.
Coffee.
You.
Tea.
Yeah. Hutchinson. All right. Love you. See you soon. Bye-bye.